The billionaire fired the cleaner without a word. Seconds later, his son spoke up. The Thompson estate sat high on the hill, its modern glass walls glowing cold under the pale morning sun. Clean lines, pristine surfaces, and robotic systems did everything except feel. The house had everything, except warmth. Natalie Morgan arrived at 6:45 a.m., just like every day. Her coat still clung to the December chill, her hands stuffed deep in her pockets as she walked through the silent courtyard. The massive front doors opened at the touch of her ID badge, but the feeling never changed, like she was entering a place frozen in grief. Inside, the only sounds were the gentle hum of the heating system and the soft patter of Mason's feet down the hallway. "Miss Natalie," he cried. Natalie dropped her bag and knelt, catching him in a tight hug. "Good morning, sweetheart," she whispered, smoothing his unruly brown hair. "You beat me to the door again." "You said you'd make pancakes today," he said, his voice small but hopeful. "And I will, blueberry ones, just like your mom used to make," she replied gently. His smile faltered for a second. It always did when his mother was mentioned. Natalie felt the ache settle in her chest, the one she tried to ignore every time she saw that look in Mason's eyes, the mix of longing and confusion only a child who had lost too soon could know. She took his hand, and they walked to the kitchen together. The marble countertops gleamed untouched. A staff of 3 housekeepers and a private chef rotated through the estate, but Mason never wanted them. He only wanted Natalie. As they mixed the batter, she let him stir, even when it made a mess. He giggled when flour dusted his nose. She wiped it away with a smile, pretending not to notice the tiny picture taped on the fridge. Mason had drawn it last week, 3 stick figures holding hands. One was clearly him. The tall one in the middle had glasses like his dad. The third, with long brown hair, was Natalie. She never mentioned it, but sometimes when no one was looking, she stared at it for a while. Upstairs, behind a door that rarely opened before noon, David Thompson sat hunched over his laptop, typing furiously. His world existed in codes, data, and deadlines. Billionaire, CEO, visionary. That's what the media called him. But none of those titles meant anything here, not in this house where silence weighed heavier than any stock price. He hadn't been downstairs in 3 days. The last time he'd spoken more than a sentence to Mason was weeks ago, maybe longer. The guilt tugged at him, but he always buried it. There was work to do, there was always work. It was only when a muffled scream pierced the hallway that he looked up. "Mason?" he muttered, standing abruptly. The clock read 3:08 a.m. David moved fast, his bare feet silent on the hardwood floors. He was halfway down the hallway when he heard Natalie's voice, soft and steady. No, sweetheart. It's just a dream. You're safe. I'm here." David froze outside the cracked bedroom door. Inside, Mason was curled in a tight ball, tears streaming down his face, clutching Natalie's sleeve like a lifeline. She sat on the edge of his bed, stroking his hair, whispering to him like a mother would. "She said she was leaving again," Mason sobbed. Natalie's voice didn't falter. "Your mom didn't leave because she wanted to, baby. She's just not hurting anymore. She's watching over you always." David's throat tightened. He couldn't move. "I want you to stay," Mason said suddenly. "Forever." Natalie didn't answer right away. She just pulled the blanket up around his shoulders and kissed his forehead. "I'm not going anywhere tonight," she whispered. David backed away from the door. He couldn't remember the last time he'd seen Mason that vulnerable, or Natalie that strong. It hit him harder than he expected, the realization that this woman, this employee, understood his son in a way he no longer did. The next morning, Natalie found David in the kitchen, a rare sight. He was pouring coffee, staring blankly at the window. When she entered, he glanced up. Their eyes met. "Thank you," he said, stiffly. "For last night." Natalie nodded. "Of course. Mason just needed someone." He hesitated. "I should have been there." She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. He looked exhausted, not just from lack of sleep, but from something deeper, like he'd been running from emotions too heavy to carry. "He talks about her in his sleep sometimes," Natalie said gently. "It helps to talk about her during the day too." David's jaw clenched. "He's 7. I don't want him living in the past." "He's not," she said, choosing her words carefully. "But he's still grieving. We all are." That word, "we," landed between them like a stone dropped in still water. David said nothing. Natalie could feel the wall going back up. She turned away, pretending to busy herself with the dishes. Later, Mason tugged her sleeve while she was folding laundry. "Daddy looked at me this morning," he said. Natalie smiled. "That's good, right?" "I think he smiled too. Just a little." "Well, maybe it's because you're amazing," she said, tickling his side. He giggled. "Do you think Daddy likes you?" Natalie paused. The question hung in the air like a fragile thread. "I don't know, Mason," she said softly. "What matters is that you do. But I want you to stay forever." She bent down to his eye level. "I'll stay as long as I'm allowed," she promised, and in her heart, she meant it, even though she knew better than to get too close, even though she felt the weight of unspoken boundaries and invisible lines every single day. The connection she had with Mason was pure, but the one with David, that was something else, something dangerous. She didn't know yet if it was hope or warning. The first time Natalie saw Madison Sinclair, she felt the shift in the air before a single word was spoken. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and the house was unusually alive. The front gates opened earlier than expected, the security system chimed, and expensive heels echoed across the marble floor. Natalie had just finished helping Mason with his homework when Mrs. Margaret appeared in the doorway, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Mr. Thompson has a guest," she said quietly, "from his past." Natalie's heart skipped, though she didn't know why. Mason peeked around the corner. "Is it Daddy's friend?" Mrs. Margaret hesitated. "Something like that, dear." Madison entered the living room like she owned the space, long blonde hair, tailored coat, flawless makeup, and eyes that scanned the room with calculated curiosity. She smiled when she saw Natalie, but it didn't reach her eyes. "So you must be Natalie," Madison said. "I've heard a lot about you." Natalie forced a polite smile. "Nice to meet you." David stepped in behind Madison, his posture tense, his expression guarded. Natalie noticed he looked uncomfortable, like someone reliving a chapter he'd hoped was closed. Madison looped her arm through his casually. "I just wanted to stop by, see how you've been holding up." David stiffened, but didn't pull away. "It's not a good time." "Nonsense," she replied lightly, her gaze drifting to Mason. "Oh my. He's grown." Mason hid slightly behind Natalie's leg. Madison crouched. "You must be Mason. I knew your mother. She was beautiful." Mason said nothing. Natalie felt the moment tighten and gently guided him back toward the hallway. "Come on, sweetheart, let's finish your drawing." Madison watched them leave, eyes sharp. Later that evening, Natalie overheard them talking in David's study. She hadn't meant to listen, she was returning a book, but the words stopped her in her tracks. "She's very close to him," Madison said softly. "Almost too close." David exhaled. "She's his nanny." Madison laughed lightly. "I know. I just worry. Some people blur lines when they get too comfortable." David didn't answer. Over the next few days, Madison became a constant presence. She stayed late. She lingered at breakfast. She praised Natalie with false sweetness, then followed with subtle questions. "How long have you worked here? Do you plan to stay forever? It must be nice living in a place like this." Natalie felt the shift. David no longer looked at her the same. His eyes followed her movements with quiet scrutiny. His voice grew colder, more distant. Mason noticed too. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked Natalie one night. She knelt. "No, sweetheart. Not ever." But the tension grew heavier. One afternoon, David called Natalie into his office. His jaw was tight, his eyes unreadable. "I've been thinking," he said, "about your role here." Natalie swallowed. "Is something wrong?" He hesitated. Madison raised concerns about boundaries, about your intentions. Her breath caught. "My intentions." He stood. "I think it's best if we end your employment, effective immediately." Natalie stared, stunned. "I don't understand. What did I do?" "I don't need to explain," he said coldly. Mason's cry echoed from the hallway. Natalie rushed to him, holding him tight. He clung to her, sobbing. "I don't want you to go." David looked away. Natalie kissed Mason's forehead, tears falling. "You'll always be in my heart." And then she walked out. The house fell silent again, but this time it felt broken beyond repair. The house felt different now, not quiet, hollow, like someone had ripped out the heart and left only walls. Mason stopped speaking the day Natalie left. At first, David thought it was just a tantrum. Kids cried when things changed. They adapted. That's what children did, wasn't it? But then he stopped eating too. No pancakes, no bedtime stories, no giggles in the hallway. Just silence and shadows where laughter used to live. David tried to talk to him. Once. Mason stared through him like he was a stranger. "Hey, buddy," he said, kneeling beside him. "Want to go to the park today?" Mason blinked, slowly, then turned his face toward the window. It was like watching something inside him shut down. The doctor came on the 4th day. He said Mason wasn't sick, at least not in any way medicine could fix. "This is emotional withdrawal," he explained gently. "He's grieving. Again." David clenched his fists. "I didn't die. He hasn't lost me." The doctor gave him a look that pierced deeper than intended. "Maybe not physically." That night, David stood in Mason's room, unsure what to do with the child who now trembled in his sleep again, whispering Natalie's name like a prayer. And still, David didn't call her. He couldn't. Pride was a powerful thing. So was denial. Until Mrs. Margaret spoke. She found him in his office, surrounded by screens, half reading the same line of code for an hour. "You fired the wrong person," she said plainly. David looked up, startled. "She loved that boy," she went on. "And not just in the way a nanny is supposed to. She was his safe place, his anchor. You don't find people like that twice." David stood, his voice low. "You don't know the whole story. I know she skipped meals so Mason could eat his favorite snack when the kitchen forgot to order more. I know she stayed the night during storms even when she wasn't on shift. I know she cried in the laundry room the first time he called her mommy by mistake, and she never told anyone, not even you, because she didn't want to overstep." Her voice broke slightly. "She held that boy's grief in her hands and she never once complained." David felt his throat tighten. "I thought I was protecting him," he said quietly. "From being manipulated." Mrs. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "No. You were protecting yourself from feeling anything." He didn't sleep that night. By morning he was gone. Natalie's hometown was a quiet patch of grey sky and red brick, a place where time moved slower, and names still meant something. He found her at a local bookstore, restocking shelves, her hair pulled into a loose bun, eyes tired but focused. She didn't see him until she turned around and dropped a stack of books. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice sharp. David stepped forward. "I made a mistake." Natalie crossed her arms. "That's an understatement." He nodded, shame washing over him. "I listened to someone I shouldn't have. I let fear decide for me. And now you want what? An apology tour? Closure?" Her voice cracked. "You humiliated me. You broke that boy." He stepped closer. "Mason needs you." "I needed you to believe in me," she snapped. "Just once. You didn't." There was a long silence. "I miss him," she said finally. "Every second." David's voice shook. "He's not eating. He's not talking. He's slipping away." Natalie's breath caught. She didn't respond right away. She turned away, gripping the counter. "Come back with me," he said softly. "Not for me. For him." She turned, tears in her eyes. "If I come back, it's on my terms," she whispered. "I won't be disposable again." David nodded. "Whatever it takes." When they returned, Mason didn't run to her. He didn't smile. But when he saw her standing in the doorway, a flicker of something sparked behind his eyes. Natalie walked to him slowly, knelt, and whispered, "I missed you so much, little man." And for the first time in days, Mason reached out. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His arms around her neck said it all. And David, watching from a distance, finally understood what it meant to be truly powerless. Because love, real love, could not be replaced. Not by money, not by pride. Only by showing up and choosing it over and over again. The house didn't change overnight, but little by little the silence began to lift. Natalie returned without ceremony, without promises. She unpacked her bags quietly and moved through the halls as if waking something long asleep. No one said it out loud, but everyone felt it. The air had shifted. Mason spoke again on the second day. It was a whisper, just a single word. "Pancakes." Natalie smiled through tears and nodded. "With blueberries," he smiled back. And just like that, the world began to thaw. David kept his distance at first. He watched from the edges, watched Natalie help Mason pick out clothes, kneel beside him as he colored, laugh softly at the kitchen table. She didn't speak to David unless she had to, but she didn't shut him out completely either. That was what gave him hope. He started making small changes. He cleared his calendar on Sundays. He took Mason to the park. He asked Natalie if she needed help, even when she didn't. Some nights he sat outside Mason's room and listened to them read. His son's laughter returned like music through the walls. It had been so long since David had really listened to his own home. Now he couldn't stop. Natalie noticed the difference. It wasn't in grand gestures. It was in the way David looked at his son now, not through him. It was in how he paused before speaking, how he apologized when he got something wrong, how he stayed even when it was hard. They began to talk again, first about Mason, then about grief, then about fear. "I thought pushing everyone away made me stronger," David said one night as they sat on the porch. Natalie stared at the stars. "And I thought staying quiet would protect me." He turned to her. "We were both wrong." The day of Mason's 8th birthday arrived with sunshine and the scent of frosting. Balloons filled the backyard. A bouncy castle stood proud on the lawn. Staff buzzed around, setting up games and snacks. But Mason only had eyes for Natalie and David. When it came time to blow out the candles, everyone leaned in. Mason closed his eyes. "I wish," he began softly, "that Miss Natalie could be my mom." The air stilled. Natalie's breath hitched. David stepped forward, something raw and real blooming in his eyes. He knelt beside his son and looked up at the woman who had become their anchor. "I can't promise I'll never mess up," he said, "but I can promise I won't run. Not from you, not from this." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Mason gasped. David opened it slowly. A simple ring. No flash, just meaning. "I love you," he said, "not because of what you've done for Mason, but because of who you are. Strong, patient, honest. You brought this house back to life." Natalie blinked fast, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I'll marry you," she said, voice trembling, "if you swear to never let fear speak louder than love again." "I swear." They embraced as Mason threw his arms around both of them, laughing. And then, a flutter. A white moth drifted in through the open window, circling above them gently before landing on the edge of the birthday cake. Natalie covered her mouth. David's eyes welled. Mason whispered, "It's Mommy." No one spoke. No one had to. The house, once hollow, was full again, not with things, but with love, with memory, with the quiet, unshakable strength of a family that chose each other. Where the heart had once been missing, it now beat strong. 3 lives entwined, healing in the light.